About objectivity. The difficulty of constructing transformative academic knowledge and enacting the transformative and social action approaches to content integration may be even more pronounced in physics, which is often storied as objective, neutral, and value free. In fact, it is on the basis of its objectivity, neutrality, and acculturality that physics considers itself epistemically superior. Gross-Fugel argues that though the canon is, quote, based on the knowledge produced by a few men from 5 countries, and thus is, quote, based on the social historical experiences and sensibilities as well as the worldviews of particular spaces and bodies, the situatedness and cultural specificity of the canon is, quote, disguised under a discourse about universality. Grossfugel argues that this disguise is made possible in part by Cartesian thought, I think, therefore I am, or the notion that the mind can be undetermined, unconditioned by the body, and thus can produce a God's eye view of the world through careful thought. Cartesian epistemology produces a subject object split where objectivity is understood as neutrality, and a body can produce unbiased knowledge unconditioned by its body or space location. To question the physics canon, then, is to situate strike that. To question a physics canon, then, to situate physics content in bodies, times, and places, and to critique the role it has played in power relations, is not only to challenge hundreds of years of westernized thought, but also to challenge the basis on which physics considers itself epistemically superior. This is less true of popular knowledge, which, though deeply entangled with the canon, is often framed by physicists as applications of physics knowledge and not physics itself. So,
Okay, so much I need to say here. Okay, um, so first of all, the word transformative or transformation is a Marxist word. Just understand when you see that, it means quite literally what it's saying. They do not want reality to continue to be what it is. They want to transform everything right down to your thoughts and feelings. So that they can rearrange the power structure in the world and, of course, naturally put themselves on top. And anyway, when I say themselves, people who believe this garbage. Uh, then this notion of a God's eye view, I am positive, as I said to Adrienne before we jumped on here, that the people who originally that we think of as the canonical sort of founders or discoverers or whatever of some of these laws, people who documented it at the very least, I am as sure as a person can be that they did not believe they had a God's eye view of the world. If anything, I'm pretty sure that several of them expounded at length on the fact that it humbled them and made them think they were quite a bit lesser than any kind of God. And there was a whole lot more they didn't know, a whole lot more they didn't know. I'm actually quite positive Einstein said something to that effect. Um, then you have the part about bodies. Notice the word body, bodies, how they are intent on creating a both a mind body connection and a mind body separation at the same time. It's a contradiction, a paradox even, if you will, that you cannot possibly separate your thoughts from your physical body and experiences, that it's just impossible to do. And that at the same time, these are the same people pushing the notion that we have this, mind, body, look, what I think about manifest. I can manifest things into being through, into the physical world if I just think hard enough about them, if I will them into being, if I think them into being, if I speak them into being. So, which is metaphysical mumbo jumbo, based on a lot of Eastern religious thought and so forth. But they are saying this body stuff, you've heard of your black bodies, white bodies. We've heard it from BLM, protect black bodies. The reason they are now inserting this in here is to drive home this belief that somehow people in a specific body think bad thoughts. Again, with the racism and this kind of really twisted essentialism that makes it impossible to perceive any group of people based on an immutable characteristic they don't like as presenting anything of value. All they have to do is say that that person's thoughts, discoveries, feelings, knowledge, is anything that they put out into the world is inseparable from that body. And therefore we get to critique it or discount it. So these are really important concepts to understand about the I don't know, postmodern. James could tell you more how this came to be and why it's important. But I'm just trying to point it out again to parents in the audience, even teachers in the audience, that this language is not it's not accidental or inconsequential. That's what they mean.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is not it's not unintentional at all. It's a very intentional thing. And I think also in the vein of objectivity and universality, he actually has a very fundamental misunderstanding of both of them, because he's saying, well, the body, he's talking about a body or what have you, the individuals and what have you. If you're Jonathan Rouse lays this out very well in the Constitution of Knowledge. If you haven't read it, it's great. It's a great sort of overarching, encompassing summary of things like Karl Popper and the falsification and all that kind of stuff that leads to now. But the basic thing is that we do recognize that individuals actually, if you're talking about real science, philosophy of science, real individuals, yeah, we do have our biases, but rather it is the collective sum total of all those who practice the discipline where it gets objective. Why? Because we're all committed to pursuing the truth, or hopefully we all are, um, that kind of thing. And then you get into, okay, wait a second, you're going to put forward this thing. So I'm going to come at it from my perspective. They're going to come at it from their perspective. We're all going to rip this dang theory that you've put forward apart and see if it still holds up under the tremendous scrutiny. So it's actually, the idea is not that we are all unbiased necessarily, but rather that we are counter checking our own biases because we're all after the same goal of what the truth is, which is completely against what they're pushing forward here, which is the activist view of power and the narrative overall, the narrative über alles and all those kinds of things. So it is a fundamental misunderstanding that when we're saying about science being objective, each scientist is perfectly objective. No, that is not the case. That is not what they're trying to say, but rather that the discipline as a whole and everybody who's practicing is good here. And I think Bill said it before that the unintentional argument, he's unintentionally arguing arguing the five countries are superior and determining reality. I'm not entirely
Didn't I just say that a little while ago?
Yeah.
Did I say that a little while ago? That's what they're doing. They don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah. But that's the other thing, is he also doesn't understand what universality and universalism is as one of those key principles of science, is the idea not that, different people in different bodies and situated and what have you. No, 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 no. It's that if you're coming at it and you're doing research in a similar way, it doesn't matter what the hell your bloody freaking culture is and where you come from or what your background is, which is why I ignore the positionality statements bullcrap all the time, because that stuff doesn't matter. If you're doing the experiments the same way, you should get the same result.
It's quite literally irrelevant information. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because it points to another layer in their, and they're sort of unintentionally communicating their beliefs about the world and reality, and that how essentialist or racially essentialist they are. They are saying that you can't separate your ethics and your morality from your body. Yeah. Think of the implications for that. Think of how terrifying the implications are if we had a majority of people in America who grew up believing that your morality, your ethics, your commitment to the truth, your commitment to objectivity, which, as you point out, is sort of essential to scientific inquiry, were inseparable from your physical, your corporeal self.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying, because now you could just literally look at someone across the street and be completely justified in saying that person is in this kind of a body, evil, bad person, kill them, hurt them.
Yeah.
They are dangerous.
That's a disgusting thing to assume, and yet that is the underlying assumption that's made.
They're saying
people think differently because of whatever cultural background and what have you. And I can go even further with this,
and it's physically impossible, Adrienne. They're saying it is physically and intellectually and psychologically, in every which way, impossible. Please prove that. I would love to see the research paper on that one, that it's impossible. These people make the people who come after me on the internet, when I say that, yes, it is actually possible to have a moral compass without God, like that I actually do believe that I'm a moral and ethical person, and I don't need to have, like a deity watching over me, or some rules that I believe came from some metaphysics, whatever, that I could construct. I hate to use the word, but I could construct that from observation, so observable reality, that I could look in the world and my experiences in it and say it's probably a bad idea for me to do these things, and not just because it would result in harm to me, But because it's wrong on some transcendent level, I can perceive, like, analyze it as a human. I can't explain why I believe in a transcendent something or what that exactly is. And just because I don't classify it as a deity doesn't mean I can't perceive that there's something else in my humanity that makes me different from an animal. But they'll come at me and say, you can't, you can't, you can't, you're not capable. Without God, you can't do this. And I have to say that, like, prove I can't. You can't look at me and say, because you're agnostic, you're evil, is slightly more rational than this. That there's more grounding in reality for what they're saying, ironically,
Oh,
than this.
oh yeah.
Because you're white, you can't possibly be objective. Okie dokie.
No, and I was just looking for because what this section reminds me of, and what our discussion reminds me of, and what they've been talking about is that dang poster that the National Museum of African American History and Culture put up a couple of years ago. That one thing
Yes.
of aspects of whiteness and white culture where they make just this stupid assumption
Oh,
about
yeah.
about what belongs to which culture. I think somebody said it here is yeah, Rick G said it here, and I said it before. Science is one of the most human endeavors you could possibly have. It really does belong
That's
to
right.
everybody. And I showed that poster to a few folks that I know. I'm like, what the hell? What does that mean for me? I came from India. I came from China. I came from South America. I do science. What the hell?
Exactly. Exactly right.
you
It's
know,
so completely ridiculous.
Did you like that video? Are you curious about the rest of the video? Because that clip came from an episode of SciChat Saturday, and the full episode is linked in the description. As always, stay curious.